60% mental and 40% physical.
Math was never our strong suit, but breaking down Ohio State football is. Sit back and join us for Buckeye Grove Instant Access, part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You can do it!
Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com. Post-game thoughts, immediate analysis, and much, much more to put the big game into perspective. Without any further delay of game, here's your host, Kevin Noon.
Kevin, goddammit.
Hey, welcome to the BIA podcast. I am your host, Kevin Noon. I will be joined here shortly with our team writer, Griffin Strom. An eventful day, to say the least. The Big Ten comes out and makes a big statement saying that we are only going to see Big Ten competition for fall sports, and obviously college football is a fall sport. So, it had long been speculated, or at least, here for the last couple of days, Tom Dienhart of our Purdue site had a story recently on it, and I don't think it was a greatly kept secret that this was a potential situation. But let's bring Griffin on the line. And, Griffin, what were your, initial thoughts once this went from maybe to possible to it's real?
Yeah, Kevin, I mean, it's really starting to feel like a mid-March all over again with how quickly things are moving with these, big conference announcements about how everything is going on. It definitely doesn't seem like there's a lot of hope. I mean, even just today, we got to talk to Gene Smith just a couple of minutes ago, the Ohio State athletic director. And he was saying, a couple months ago in May, that he was cautiously optimistic, and now that's kind of gone for him. And, I kind of feel the same way myself. I mean, even, not even 2 months ago, maybe a month ago, I still kind of thought like, yeah, there's definitely a chance that things are going to, get rolling, with the announcement of the NBA coming back. Obviously, we've had the TBT going on in Columbus as well. I just assumed that things would start to just, kind of proceed. But now it kind of feels inevitable that eventually they're just going to kind of nix or push everything back even further.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second, because why do you make this call today when you're fully intending on punting on the season or getting to that point? I'm not saying that we should be celebrating this as this is, we're definitely going to have football now or whatnot. But I mean, I do think that if you were doubtful that you were going to have it, just coming to this decision here at this point, a day or two on the heels of the Ivy League coming out and canceling its fall sports, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little too hopeful here. Maybe my missing of college football has my vision clouded or whatnot. But I was on the same conference call you were. I got to hear Gene Smith talk about not being nearly as confident as he was in mid-May, the last time that we had a conference call with the Ohio State athletic director. But I don't know. I'm not ready to sell entirely, even though I am ready to cancel my reservations to fly to Portland the second week of the season.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you're keeping my hopes up a little bit. I don't know. I guess I was a little bit confused, because I guess when we first got the announcement that the Big Ten, that the non-conference season was going to get nixed, I kind of took that to mean in my head that they were just going to start playing the conference games when they were originally intended to be played, so that they would have more time, if that makes sense. But I guess it's actually that they would be moving the season up in order to play fewer games with more time to be able to kind of move things around if need be. So if like how discussed on the conference call today, if all four quarterbacks on team's roster, tested positive, would that constitute needing to postpone a game? And so now they theoretically have more time to reschedule that game a few weeks later or what have you.
But if you also look at the Big Ten schedule, there were on September 5th, week 1, there were 2 conference games there. Michigan State and Northwestern were supposed to play, in Indiana, Wisconsin, and actually right. Nebraska and Purdue. So, after going back and listening to the sound and whatnot, what it appears is that it's going to be a case of where they would start the season potentially that what we're calling week 1, September 5th, or even 0 week, which is the week before that. and then you would have the opportunity to spread things out. And I'm trying to pull the quote up in front of me. Just finished right before we recorded this podcast, transcribing some of what Gene had said, and I'm looking for it. As you can tell, I'm filibustering here. Flexibility was what he talked about so much. And, if we were able to play in September and something occurs in late September or early October, we can hit the pause button, and provide a window of opportunity for our student athletes not to be put at risk. We can move games. If a particular environment, then he went on to say, if we are scheduled to play somewhere else and an outbreak occurs in that environment and that school has to shut down, we can change. There's flexibility there. I can't say that enough. It is significant. So, we don't have a schedule in front of us. We don't know what things are going to look like. Gene did make it sound like that they're going to really start tackling this in a week or so. But don't look for a situation of where, it's just going to be, they're going to port over the existing 9-game schedule and maybe throw one game on it at this, it's certainly not going to occur in the same dates, and it may not occur in the same order. There's a lot of talk out there. Adam Rittenberg of ESPN was the first person to post this that I saw on social about potentially front loading your divisional games early in the season just because of the importance of that and trying to determine a champion.
Right. And I thought it was also interesting that Gene was asked about the spring football season, because that's obviously been a big button topic because of the Ivy League saying that they wouldn't play fall sports in the fall, but maybe in the spring after January 1st. And then Gene Smith basically said that hasn't even been really discussed. They're really trying to work with what's in front of them and not even getting to that option of the spring just yet. So I thought that was definitely interesting as well.
Yeah, I've been a vocal critic of spring football. I mean, they're not going to listen to me, but I've been a big vocal critic. I just don't understand doing a March, April, May season, maybe even having to go into June if you put some flexibility into the scheduling, and then say, all right, take 10 days off and we'll see you back in the gym and start getting ready for the 21 season. I mean, you potentially run the risk of degrading that season. I mean, not to mention the fact that the Trevor Lawrences and the Justin Fields of the world, there's absolutely zero incentive for them to play at the end of the day. And, Kevin, but the brotherhood, I get it. But when you've got an 8-figure payday in front of you with signing bonuses and everything else, you've really got to look at that. And when we sit there and we see guys who sit out of quote unquote meaningless exhibition games being bowl games, when Denzel Ward didn't play in the Cotton Bowl and whatnot, you think that somebody's going to want to go out there and play, a 10-game schedule, 12-game schedule in the spring, potentially screw things up for the combine. And, while, in a lot of sports, that second contract's the one where you get paid. Those first NFL slots aren't that bad either if you're taken, especially in the first round.
Right. But what are the odds that, it just gets so complicated and kind of frustrating that somebody like a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence just says, even if they do, get things rolling, but they're like, okay, this is just all kind of too hot right now. Like, let me just remove myself even before that.
Oh, there certainly is that potential, and it wouldn't surprise me for somebody to potentially do that. I don't know if, specifically if I would say a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence, two guys that honestly are Heisman favorites and a lot of other things there. But, I could see somebody maybe at another position, you only get so many hits out there and whatnot. If you could take a year off of there, but, and I don't think any NFL team would look at that as any sort of character issue. I think they'd look at it as like, well, he's making a business decision, and, this is a business, and the NFL stands for not for long. So, yeah, I certainly agree that could potentially happen, but, I think there is a better chance that if they go in the fall as they're supposed to, according to a regular schedule, that we're going to see a higher participation rate than we would ever see come spring.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then kind of another topic that came up just because of the the nixing of the non-conference games is a team like Notre Dame that obviously isn't part of one of those Power Five conferences. And what have you seen about where Notre Dame goes from here with the the likelihood of the other conferences coming forward and doing the same thing that the Big Ten just announced?
I can't remember who posted it, but I saw it from, I believe it was an ACC writer saying that Notre Dame would be lumped in with the ACC. I cannot confirm that. I see lots of stuff on Twitter. I don't know if, you can never sit there and really hook your wagon to it, but that would make sense since they are an ACC member in everything but football, and then they do have their scheduling agreement to where they have to play X amount of teams. So I would figure that would be the case. Plus, two, it certainly would help the ACC in terms of its image of being a one-league team with Clemson. I mean, sure, North Carolina's coming up and whatnot, but FSU still a train wreck. Miami still hasn't been able to put things together. I think that the run for Syracuse was kind of a one and done. I don't know if people are as high on Dino Babers' team right now as they were maybe going into last year, and only to be disappointed. I think that would make sense, but it'll be interesting because Gene, who was on the college football playoff selection committee for a year, and then he asked off of it so he could kind of focus more on Ohio State and whatnot. He said point blank that he's not as concerned about what other conferences are doing, whether, the Big Ten lands at 10 games and another league lands at 9 or whatnot, or what a postseason looks like. The focus is that these players now have the opportunity to compete and play, and, focusing on that. But, that's easy for us to sit here and talk about here in July. We're going to release here next week our own Buckeye Grove, preseason top 25, and we're not back when I was a student, winning the Big Ten meant a lot more than what it means right now. Is it because Ohio State has won it a lot here recently? No, we're just kind of in the college football playoff era, and that's really what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah. And, it would be interesting to see what would happen if the conferences, go to these conference schedules and somehow, in whatever way a postseason isn't possible or doesn't come together because of postponing stuff so much or whatever the case may be. What would happen at that point? Would we go back to teams just kind of claiming their stakes, several national champions potentially?
We should probably just give it to UCF. They'll claim it anyway. But we might have 3 or 4 national champions at that point. Who knows? But the thing I'll say with that is, I think in terms of, I understand in the decision to only play league games, and those venues, those locker rooms, your hotels. You don't necessarily know what's going on there right now, but protocols and routines are very important. I think in terms of bowl games, maybe it won't be the same type of situation to where, at the Rose Bowl, they were going to Lowry's for the beef bowl to eat all the prime rib, or going to Disneyland to go on the rides or whatever. But I would think in terms of a bowl setup, you got the guys staying in a hotel. It might be easier to sequester them and be able to set up the quote unquote bubble that we talk about at Disney for the NBA, and whatever the 2 hub cities are going to be for the NHL. It might be an easier situation. Hell, maybe you sit there, and I don't think anybody would want to go back to back, but maybe you do a situation of where you do your semifinals and you do your championship game like the week after or whatever, and you just don't go back to your home city, and all 4 teams enter their own bubbles there, and then the 2 teams that remain in the bubble. But I don't know. This is well above our pay grade.
Yes, definitely all conjecture at this point. That's even what Gene was saying, is a lot of the stuff. It's out there, but they have to really dig into the nitty gritty details here in the coming weeks. And he did mention that July 24th date when those preseason that preseason practice 6-week schedule starts rolling out, and how they're going to have to kind of answer some questions before that gets here. Because, I mean, as we talked about, the voluntary workouts were just kind of stopped just yesterday at Ohio State. And so with that date approaching, there will definitely be some questions to be answered.
Yeah, we're just not sure, and that's ultimately the thing. Everybody thinks they have an answer. They think they know what the roadmap is going to be. People howled when Gene said that it might be 20 or 30,000 fans in the stadium in May, and then he had to go on social and say, but depending on where we are at right now, where we're at come that time, it could be higher. Well, obviously, just based on Franklin County being Ohio being a level 3 in terms of whatever the setup that Governor DeWine put in place or whatnot, if you're into those numbers, it's certainly not trending in the right direction toward that. But he was even asked about fans in the stands, but when it was asked, I kind of just muttered under my breath, that thing's going to change 64 times, but it's a question that needed to be asked. And I know that our members here at Buckeye Grove, there are a lot of people who want to be able to come out, but I guarantee you, this 2020 isn't going to look like anything we've ever seen. And hopefully, this is the exception and not, any sort of, and I hate this term, a new normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that was one other thing was Gene was kind of asked about, is there going to have to be kind of just like an acceptance that, it's not going to be the case that just nobody ever gets a positive test and ever, you know what I mean? That things are going to be different and things are going to have to be worked around, and there's just kind of no way around that. Especially because we don't know how long the virus is going to be, sticking around in general. I mean, with talking about when vaccines are going to be, available. I mean, if you're going to wait on, the virus being completely eradicated before we can start playing sports, you know what I mean? It just becomes a kind of a slippery slope.
Right. There's, and I'm not going to get into, I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, and please, nobody ever take my medical advice because I don't know what the heck I'm talking about with that, but it certainly doesn't seem like, at one point we were talking about containment, and, in a lot of ways now it feels like we're talking about eradication, and those are two very different levels on there. I think it's going to be a matter of finding a way to either therapeutically coexist with this or herd immunity or whatnot, but I'll save that for the Dr. Oz podcast or whoever's out there talking about it. If you took a couple of pre-med classes at Ohio State, you're more qualified than me.
And certainly I am not that man.
Well, we're getting close to the 20-minute mark, so we're going to start to wrap this up. But any other thoughts or takeaways here on this, what's going to end up being a pretty monumental day in terms of what this 2020 season is going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a wild day, a fast news cycle. That Gene Smith press conference really crept right up on us at the tail end of that Big Ten announcement. But I am glad he came and addressed a lot of things with the media. It was nice to hear some kind of behind the scenes stuff about what those conversations are like at the administrative level. Even if we didn't get all the answers that we are kind of clamoring for at this juncture. Exactly.
We're always going to have a lot of questions. I think a lot of times we know that some of the questions we're asking don't have answers right now, but you're not gonna get any answers if you don't ask the questions. And here July 9th or whatever it is, I guarantee you we check back in 10 days and we may be looking at a lot of different things. But one thing we know for sure is that as of now, the Big Ten is only going to play conference games. Sorry to Bowling Green and Buffalo and Oregon, and we're going to have to kind of, table those things. Gene Smith said that he will be talking with those ADs and looking at rescheduling and whatnot, but that's another time, another place. We will get to that on another show, but I want to thank everybody for listening to us. I want to thank you, Griffin, for being part of the show, and we will be back when news breaks here on the BIA podcast. Thanks, and goodbye.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game, exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.